The late 1960s, America was a nation in turmoil, tapestry woven with threads of conflict, counterculture, and social revolution. But against this vibrant backdrop, in the sun-drenched landscape of Northern California, a dark shadow was beginning to stretch, a shadow that would cast a chill over the entire country for decades to come. This is the story of how that shadow took shape, the story of the first days of the Zodiac. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a quiet, terrifying act under the stars. December 20th, 1968. On a secluded lover's lane in Benicia, a small city on the edge of the San Francisco Bay, two high school students were on their first date. In the darkness, their car was approached. The encounter was swift and brutal. When law enforcement arrived, they found a scene of confusion and horror. At first, it seemed like a tragic but isolated incident, perhaps a robbery gone wrong. There was no clear motive, no obvious suspect. For the local community, it was a shock, but the wider Bay Area remained largely unaware. The case was filed, but answers were scarce. For months, the incident remained a local tragedy, a painful memory for the families involved. The Bay Area continued its life, buzzing with the energy of the summer of love's afterglow. Then, on the 4th of July, 1969, the shadow fell again. This time, in a park in Vallejo, just a few miles from the first crime scene. Another young couple, enjoying the holiday evening, was attacked. One of the victims survived and was able to give authorities a description of the assailant, but the details were frighteningly vague. He was just a man, his features unremarkable. This second attack stirred a new kind of unease to similar crimes in neighboring towns targeting young couples. The police in Solano County began to wonder, was there a connection? A pattern was emerging, one that was too specific to be a coincidence. The media started reporting on the possibility of a link, and a quiet current of fear began to ripple through the local communities. Lovers' lanes, once places of youthful romance, were now viewed with suspicion and anxiety. Parents warned their children to be more careful, to stay away from isolated spots at night. A sense of vulnerability had crept in, but the person behind these acts wasn't content to remain in the shadows. He wanted a name. He wanted the world to know his work. At the end of July 1969, just a few weeks after the second attack, something unprecedented happened. 3 different newspapers in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald each received a letter. The handwriting was distinct, almost childlike in its blocky print. The author took credit for the attacks in Benicia and Vallejo, providing details that only the killer and the police could know. This was his proof. The letters were chilling, not just for their content, but for their tone. The writer was boastful, arrogant, and clearly intelligent. He spoke of his acts with a cold detachment, as if they were part of a game. He wasn't just writing to confess. He was issuing a demand. Each of the 3 letters included one part of a 3-part cryptogram, a coded message totaling 408 characters. The author demanded that the newspapers publish his cipher on their front pages. If they refused, he threatened to go on a rampage and claim a dozen more lives over the weekend. The newspapers and law enforcement were faced with an impossible choice. Should they give a killer the public platform he craved? Could they risk ignoring his threat? After intense deliberation with the FBI, they decided to comply. They published the ciphers, along with articles explaining the situation to a stunned public. Overnight, the story exploded. The local crimes were now a national sensation. The anonymous attacker had given himself a name, a symbol he signed his letters with, a circle with a cross through it. The media, needing a name for this new public menace, dubbed him the Zodiac Killer. The publication of the cipher turned the entire Bay Area into a community of amateur detectives. People from all walks of life, students, teachers, mathematicians, huddled over their morning papers, trying to crack the code. The killer had said his identity was hidden within those strange symbols. The race was on. The public was both terrified and fascinated. The Zodiac was no longer just a physical threat hiding in the darkness. He was a psychological one, taunting society from the front page of its own newspapers. Just over a week later, the code was broken. Not by the FBI or the CIA, who were also working on it, but by a high school teacher from Salinas, Donald Hardin, and his wife, Betty. The message, when finally deciphered, was not the killer's name as he had promised. Instead, it was a rambling, misspelled manifesto. It was filled with disturbing proclamations about the pleasure he derived from his crimes and a bizarre belief that his victims would become his slaves in the afterlife. The message only deepened the mystery and heightened the public's fear. The killer was not just violent, he was delusional, operating within his own twisted reality. The Zodiac was now a household name. He had successfully manipulated the media and terrified a major metropolitan area. He had proven he was smart, cunning, and completely devoid of empathy. The first phase of his campaign of terror was complete. He had established his identity, communicated his motives. However warped they were, and demonstrated his ability to command the public's attention. The authorities in Northern California were no longer just investigating isolated crimes. They were hunting a ghost, a phantom who called himself the Zodiac, who could strike anywhere, at any time. As the summer of 1969 drew to a close, an uneasy calm settled over the Bay Area. But everyone knew this was not the end. It was merely a pause. The Zodiac had promised more. He had set the stage, and the next act was about to begin. The letters, the ciphers, and the constant threat had changed the very fabric of the community. Fear was a new, unwelcome resident. The question on everyone's mind was not if the Zodiac would strike again, but when and where. The story of the Zodiac had just begun. The killer's most audacious attacks and his most baffling codes were still to come, drawing law enforcement and the public deeper into a maze of fear and speculation. Join us in Part 2 as we explore the Zodiac's escalation, his brazen attacks in broad daylight, and the iconic taunts that would cement his legacy as America's most elusive serial killer. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this chilling story.